He said he had a last-minute business trip, but when I called his hotel, they said, Mr. and Mrs., his last name, just checked in. My blood ran cold. I booked a flight and showed up at his hotel room door. When he opened it, his smile faded instantly. Behind him, she stood in a robe. "Who's this?" she asked. I crossed my arms and said, "I was about to ask you the same thing." His mouth opened, but no words came out. I tossed my wedding ring at him and whispered, "Enjoy your business trip." Then I walked away, leaving them both speechless. I never thought I'd be writing something like this. I used to read these stories and think that sucks, but it won't happen to me. I thought I was safe. I thought I had a solid marriage. I thought my husband was a good man. I'm 44. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Been married for 19 years. No kids. We tried, but it didn't happen, and we made peace with that years ago. We built a life together. Bought our house, fixed it up ourselves. Had regular date nights. Cooked dinner together. Celebrated small things. All that, we're still in love after all these years type of marriage. Or so I thought. His name is Mark Richards. He's 47. Works in finance. Consultant. Travels often for work, always has. Big clients, high-pressure job. I was proud of him. I supported his career. Every late night, every trip, every weekend he was too tired to do much. I never once questioned it. He told me on a Monday night that he had to leave for Miami early Tuesday morning. Said it was a client emergency. Said he'd be gone 3 days max. It wasn't out of the ordinary. These kinds of trips were common. I didn't think much of it. I packed for him like I always did. Washed his dress shirts. Made sure he had his shaving kit. Folded everything the way he likes. Even slid a small card in his bag that said, "Love you. Proud of you." I've been doing that for years. A little tradition. But something didn't sit right with me. He was jumpy. Kept checking his phone every couple minutes. Didn't let it out of his sight. I tried to take a picture of us at the airport, just a quick selfie, and he said, "No, I look tired," and turned away fast. He never cared about how he looked before. We've taken plenty of ugly photos over the years and laughed about it. But that morning, he looked more panicked than tired. When he kissed me goodbye, he didn't hold on like usual. It was quick. Too quick. I went home and tried to shake it off. Told myself I was being silly. But that feeling stayed. It just grew. My chest felt tight all day. That evening, I poured a glass of wine and called my sister. Just casual talk. I told her about the trip and mentioned how weird Mark had been acting. She half joked, maybe he's not going for work. Maybe he's going with someone. It hit me like a slap. I laughed it off on the phone, but once we hung up, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I opened his work calendar, which he keeps synced with mine so I can help plan things. The hotel was listed, the Eden Rock in Miami Beach. I remembered helping him book a dinner there last month for a conference, so I assumed he reused the location. That night, I couldn't sleep. Tossed and turned. Got up around 2:30 a.m. and stared at the ceiling. And then I just grabbed my phone and called the hotel. I didn't expect anything. I really didn't. I thought maybe I'd hear his voice, say goodnight, calm my nerves. Just needed to hear something normal. The receptionist answered. I said, "Hi, I'm trying to reach a guest, Mark Richards. Can you connect me to his room?" She paused. Then she said, "Sure, Mr. and Mrs. Richards just checked in not long ago. Would you like me to transfer you?" I said, "Mrs. Richards?" She said, "Yes, they just arrived maybe an hour ago." I hung up. I sat there in silence. My ears were ringing. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I felt like I was floating above my body. Mrs. Richards. I am Mrs. Richards. Who the hell was with him? I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went cold. I stared at the wall for about 5 minutes, then opened my laptop and booked a flight to Miami. The next one out was in 4 hours. I booked it. I packed one small bag and left the house. On the plane, I felt like I was made of stone. Couldn't read. Couldn't cry. Couldn't think straight. I kept going over everything in my head. Every lie. Every trip. Every time he said, "Don't wait up." I took a cab straight from the airport to the hotel. It was hot and sunny. Tourists everywhere. I walked through the lobby like a ghost. I didn't check in at the desk. I knew the room number already, 1118. He had used it before. The elevator ride felt like forever. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I walked down the hall. My hands were shaking. I knocked. A few seconds passed. Then I heard movement. The door opened. He stood there, shirtless, smiling until he saw me. His face dropped. He looked like someone had kicked him in the chest. Just went pale. "Diane?" That's all he said. Just my name. Behind him, a woman stepped into view. She was maybe in her mid-30s. Long brown hair, tall, wearing a white hotel robe, holding a wine glass. She was barefoot. Comfortable. She looked at me, then at him. "Who is this?" she asked, confused but not surprised. Like maybe she suspected, but didn't know for sure. I didn't move. I just stared. Then I said, very quietly, "I was about to ask you the same thing." He opened his mouth. No sound came out. I pulled off my wedding ring and tossed it at him. It hit his chest and landed on the carpet. I didn't even look down at it. Then I said, "Enjoy your business trip." And I walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't wait for him to chase me. I walked straight to the elevator, wrote it down, and left. I don't know what they did after that. I don't care. I found a cheap motel near the airport and sat on the bed for hours. I didn't cry until the sun came up. Then I cried harder than I ever have in my life. 19 years. Just gone. That was 2 weeks ago. I haven't answered his calls. He's left voicemails. Sent emails. Texts. All of them say the same crap. "Please talk to me." It's not what it looked like. I can explain. I made a mistake. I haven't replied. I haven't told anyone except my sister. I'm not sure what to do next. I feel empty and furious at the same time. I keep hearing the words "Mr. and Mrs. Richards just checked in" on a loop in my head. I can't sleep. This post is already long and I don't even have an ending. Just needed to let this out. I thought walking away from that hotel room would be the end. But it wasn't. That was just the start of something worse. I hadn't even scratched the surface of what Mark had done. Or who she was. I went back to Charlotte the next day. Didn't tell him. I didn't tell work either. I used some PTO and shut myself in. My sister came over and brought food. I didn't eat much. Couldn't. Everything tasted like sand. 3 days later, my phone rang again. Mark. I stared at it. Then it stopped. Then started again, but this time from a different number. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to it. It was her. "Hi, Diane. This is, well, I guess you probably know who I am now. I didn't know. He told me you two were separated. That you hadn't been together for months. I'm sorry. I didn't know." Her voice was shaking. Nervous. But not apologetic. She sounded more embarrassed than anything else. I listened to it again. Then again. I saved her number. Then I called her. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe I wanted answers. Maybe I wanted to hear it straight from her mouth. Maybe I just needed to confirm I wasn't crazy. She picked up right away. "Diane?" "Yes," I said. "Let's talk." We met at a coffee shop in Dilworth the next morning. Neutral ground. I got there early and sat by the window. She walked in exactly on time. Same woman from the hotel, just dressed now. Jeans, blouse, hair tied back. Pretty. Clean makeup. She looked tired. She sat down. Didn't order anything. Just looked at me. "I'm sorry," she said again. I didn't know. "How long?" I asked. She blinked. 6 months. My stomach flipped. 6 months. She nodded. We met at a conference in Nashville. I didn't know he was married at first. He told me he was divorced. Then later said you two were separated. He said you lived in the same house for practical reasons. I should have known something was off, but I believed him. I stared at her. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Pity? Rage? "Did you love him?" She looked down. I thought I did. "I don't know now." There was silence. Then she said, "He told me he was going to propose. That he'd finalize everything with you soon. That's why we went to Miami. He said it was a fresh start." A fresh start? I nearly laughed. Or screamed. Maybe both. She nodded again, slowly. "He gave me a ring, Diane. Not an engagement ring, exactly. More like a promise ring. But still. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. A ring. For her. While still married to me. I left that meeting in a daze. Got in my car and screamed until my voice cracked. 6 months. Promises. Rings. Lies. And then, it got worse. 2 days after that meeting, I got a letter. A manila envelope. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. It was Mark and her, standing in front of a house. Not a hotel. A house. In Atlanta. Holding hands. Smiling. Like a couple. On the back of the photo was a date. January 3rd. That was our anniversary. I was at home, alone, crying into takeout while he told me he was working late with a client. I started digging. Checked our joint credit card. There were charges from Home Depot in Georgia. Target. PetSmart. PetSmart? We don't have pets. I scrolled further. Vet bills. Food delivery. For a whole second life. I realized this wasn't just an affair. It wasn't even just cheating. Mark had built another life. In another city. With another woman. Possibly living with her on weekends when he said he had work travel. I stared at the credit card statement for an hour. Frozen. Then I started printing everything. Every receipt. Every charge. Every date. I opened a folder. I started building my own case. I was going to confront him. Not with yelling. Not with tears. But with proof. He had no idea what was coming. I was sitting at the kitchen table when I realized something else. The phone. Mark had been oddly protective of it that last week. Always keeping it face down. Always turning off notifications. I still had access to the phone plan. The bill comes to my email, it's under my name. I opened the most recent one and started checking the call logs. And there it was. Not just one number repeated. Two. One was her, the woman from the hotel, the woman from the coffee shop. Her number matched the one she'd called me from. But the second number? It was unfamiliar. I looked at the pattern: short, late night calls. Weekends. Always after 10 p.m. Always when he said he was too tired to talk or had early morning meetings. Always when he was just grabbing dinner alone. I called it. It went to voicemail. A woman's voice. Younger. Definitely younger. Soft, kind of flirty. Her name wasn't the same as the first woman. Now my head was spinning. I saved the number, opened Facebook, and searched it. Her name popped up immediately, a 29-year-old nurse from Asheville. I clicked through her profile. First post, love when he surprises me on his way through town. Best man I've ever known. 2 arts. The photo? Her and Mark. At a cabin. He was wearing the same flannel he used to wear to our bonfires at the lake. I checked the date. February 14th, Valentine's Day. I remember that night. He said he was in Tampa for a finance expo. He even sent me a photo of a fake-looking hotel room tray dinner. But he was in Asheville. With her. I messaged her. I said, "Hi, I think we need to talk. I'm Mark Richards' wife." She didn't answer for a day. When she did, it was just, wife. Then she called me. We talked for almost 2 hours. She was crying. I wasn't. She had no idea. Not a clue. He'd told her he was a widower. That his wife had passed away years ago from cancer. That he was still working through grief. A widower. I almost threw my phone through the wall. She was devastated. Said she was planning to move to Charlotte to be closer to him. Said they talked about marriage too. Marriage. So that's 3 women now, including me. 3 versions of the same man. I asked her to send me anything she had, photos, texts, whatever. She did. Over 50 screenshots. Some from recent weeks. Some as far back as a year ago. She had photos of them at family dinners, his family. His parents. His brother. Wait. His family knew. I zoomed in. That was his mom sitting at the table. That was his sister-in-law making dessert in the background. They'd met her. Spent holidays with her. While still calling me part of the family. I don't know how I didn't throw up. That night, I called his mom. She picked up. Friendly voice. "Hi, sweetie. Everything okay? Did you know?" I asked. "Know what, Diane? Did you know Mark is seeing other women? Did you know he introduced one of them to your family?" Silence. Then, stiff. "I think you should talk to Mark about this." "So you did know." Click. She hung up. I sat there stunned. It was all a lie. Not just him. Everyone. His family played along. Lied to my face. Hugged me. Sent birthday cards. And all along, they were helping him build this little empire of cheating. Protecting him. I didn't sleep that night. Just started writing. I documented every lie, every charge, every screenshot. I made timelines. 3 of them. One for me, one for the woman in Miami, and one for the nurse in Asheville. I color-coded them. And I started to notice something even more disturbing. The dates overlapped even further. He had a system. Every other weekend was Asheville. Every second Tuesday to Thursday was Miami. And the rest? He was with me. Like clockwork. 3 lives. 3 women. All thinking they were the only one. All believing his lies. I wanted to burn it all down. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I printed every page of that timeline and slipped it into a leather binder. I made copies of the credit card statements. I got photos from the other 2 women. I made a folder. And I put it in the glove box of my car, because I wasn't done yet. Mark didn't know I knew everything. But he was about to find out. Mark still didn't know. He had no idea I'd spoken to both women. No idea I knew about the house in Atlanta. No idea his family's silence had exposed him even more than his lies. He kept calling. Leaving voice messages like nothing had happened. Pretending it was just a mistake, as if I'd seen him text someone by accident and misread it. He had no clue the hurricane that was coming for him. I waited a week. I planned everything. I told him I'd meet him for dinner, to talk, I said. Told him I wanted to understand, maybe even forgive. He took the bait fast. Picked a place in South Park. Fancy. The kind of place we'd go for anniversaries. He showed up wearing the watch I bought him for our 15th. I was already seated. Calm. Binder in my lap. Envelope beside it. He looked relieved. Like he thought he was off the hook already. "You look good," he said, trying to smile. I just nodded. The waiter came and he ordered wine, still trying to act normal. When the drinks arrived, I slid the binder across the table. What's this? Open it. He flipped the cover. First page, photo of him and the nurse in Asheville. He blinked. Turned the page. Hotel receipts. Love notes. Vet bills. His face dropped. Next page, photo of him and the Miami woman in front of the Atlanta house. Her hand on his chest. That stupid flannel shirt. Where did you keep going? He did. Slowly. Page after page. Dozens. Every detail. Every lie. Timeline matching his business trips to his double life. Triple life. The messages. The overlapping promises. He closed the binder. Didn't speak for a full minute. Then, Diane. I can explain. I actually laughed. Loud enough that people at nearby tables turned. Explain what, Mark? That you're a liar? That you told one woman your wife died and told another you were getting divorced. He looked down. Hands clenched on the table. I didn't mean for it to get this far. You meant to cheat. You meant to lie. You meant to pretend like you were something you weren't. This isn't one mistake. This is calculated. You had schedules, Mark. He stayed quiet. Then, the Miami woman walked in. I'd invited her too. She walked right over to the table. Calm, collected, with her own folder in hand. Hi, Mark, she said. Fancy seeing you here. His mouth dropped open. Face flushed. He stood up halfway, then froze. What the hell is going on? He whispered. You're going to sit, I said. And you're going to listen. The nurse joined 2 minutes later. She came in shaking, clutching her phone. Tears in her eyes. People were watching now. The whole restaurant had gone silent. I thought you loved me, she said, barely above a whisper. I did, he started, but she held up a hand. No, you don't get to say that. It all came crashing down. The nurse read his messages out loud. Things he said to her about me, disgusting lies about our marriage, about how I used him, about how I refused kids when I was the one who couldn't carry. The woman from Miami told the table how he promised her a future, told her he wanted a family, that they were house hunting in Atlanta. I just sat there and watched him crumble. Watched the slick, confident man I'd married fold in on himself. He started crying. Like real, shaking, pathetic sobbing. I didn't know what I was doing, he said, wiping his face. I felt trapped. I wanted to be different. I didn't want to lose any of you. You never had us, I said. You had lies. The waiter came over, unsure what to do. Mark stood up and walked out. Just left. Like a coward. Didn't say another word. Plus we all sat there, stunned. The nurse cried. The other woman just stared at her empty wine glass. I picked up the binder and left a $100 bill on the table. None of us spoke as we walked out. The next day, he texted me. One sentence, please don't take everything. I didn't respond. I filed for divorce the following Monday. Fast-tracked it with the evidence I had. North Carolina doesn't need cause to grant a divorce, but I gave them the binder anyway. I sent a copy to both the other women for whatever legal help they needed. I blocked his number. His mom called once. I let it go to voicemail. We didn't know it was like that, Diane. We didn't know there were others. Yes, you did. You knew enough. You knew more than me. The house is quiet now. Too quiet some nights. I still find his things, a tie in the back of a drawer, a sock under the bed. I burn them. I see couples walking their dogs, smiling like nothing in the world could touch them, and I wonder how many of them are living double lives. How many people out there think they're loved, but they're just being managed? I don't trust as easily anymore. But weirdly, I don't regret what I did. I don't regret calling that hotel. I don't regret showing up. I don't regret throwing the ring at him. I regret loving someone who never existed. But I don't regret waking up from it. I'm not sure what comes next. But I know what won't. Settling for lies. If someone loves you, you'll know. If they don't, you'll be confused. That's the lesson I'll carry forever.